EC Council finds itself in trouble over a poll. Facebook says breach notification? I barely know them. Plus multiple vulnerabilities and more on today's episode of Bear Security. Welcome to Bear Security, a weekly take on topics affecting our businesses, clients, careers, and communities in cybersecurity. As a first episode, I want to thank you for taking the time to check it out. And now, on to our topics. The EC Council tops this week's news for providing a lesson in what not to do when talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Early Friday morning, the EC Council had posted a poll on LinkedIn saying, "What, according to you, are the most common challenges faced by women in the cybersecurity domain?" This was then followed by some downright sexist and derogatory options of, "Only men can do this job," "Women can't handle this job," or "Women aren't encouraged enough." As one can imagine, this was not well received by aspiring or established security professionals, with calls to remove the poll once it had been posted. The poll ended up remaining for about half the day, and as it was removed, it seems they began adding insult to injury by blocking primarily women who rightfully criticized the organization from their social media. This led a lot of professionals to reach out to their HR departments and academic providers or institutions to reconsider their relationship with the organization and any requirements they may have for their certification. As evening fell on Friday, Alyssa Miller on Twitter, at handle AlyssaM_infosec, who was one of the earlier people to bring attention to this, was graced with the organization's first response as a reply to her initial post about it, but no other evidence was found that they had apologized to others. A statement in part saying that the wording was unacceptable and had not been vetted, and nobody should have ever been blocked. It was not until nearly 24 hours after the poll had originally been posted that the CEO of EC Council, Jay Bavizzi, posted a public apology that was then posted across the organization's social media, reading in part, "We inadvertently published a poorly worded version of a survey that did not get QC approval on LinkedIn, and the problematic language was appropriately pointed out by some of our followers. The criticism was shared on Twitter, and an overeager team member panicked, worried about a reprimand, and responded by blocking the posters of the comments, which isn't something we condone and is, without doubt, not in line with company policy. As soon as we learned this, we immediately unblocked those accounts and issued an apology." You can see the full detail regarding their comments in the links in the video description below. This situation leaves us with more concerns than good feels. While Jay does take responsibility for the situation and mentions that an employee afraid of reprimand took to blocking people, it does raise questions for us around the health of the culture and processes at the EC Council. The EC Council is also no stranger to questionable concerns around their policy, documented by sites like attrition.org. In a 2015 document that was resurfaced on Twitter yesterday, was a publication regarding a dress code that was handed to those who were certified with EC Council, noting that women should wear pantsuits with high heels to a pen test. While we are not sure the functional use of high heels beyond testing floor hardness, in that case we would kind of expect that all people who are going to pen test would have to wear high heels for that purpose. Blocking people generally indicates a lack of accountability or respect when these kind of things happen. And while we can definitely understand the time zone difference, it feels like there should be more than one person who can respond or react to do damage control in an international organization such as theirs. And again, given the history mentioned earlier, processes to responding to concerning or critical matters within the EC Council should have already been established, and it seems like they still aren't. As an organization who certifies professionals, we expect them to set the example of what to be, not what not to be. They have significant work to do to regain trust of the industry and really the community if they haven't already taken out their last line. For now, organizations such as CompTIA and others are more than happy to point out their appreciation of women in IT and cybersecurity, and we applaud them for it. Last week, it was reported that more than 533 million Facebook accounts were leaked publicly after having circulated in the dark web earlier this year for sale. Researchers say the information found included phone numbers, email addresses, birthdays, occupation, location, marital status, and other personal details. Facebook believes the data was scraped from profiles in August 2019 using their contact import feature that had a vulnerability which was exploited by threat actors. While they claim no sensitive data was leaked, such as credit card or social security numbers or passwords, the information is still substantial enough to social engineer any of the users impacted. Facebook told CNN Business in part on Friday the company can't be certain about exactly which users would need to be notified, and therefore does not plan to alert any of the individuals who were potentially affected. This is going to be kind of interesting to see, considering how regulators would respond, as this information is often considered private under the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, or over in Europe with the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. ThreatPost is reporting a flaw in Fortinet's VPNs that is now being actively exploited by threat actors to deliver a ransomware strain known as Kring, targeting industrial enterprises across Europe. Kring is a new ransomware that joins the like of strains such as Revel, Ryuk, Maze, and Conti that was identified back in January by security researcher Amigo A and Swisscom's CSIRT team. What sets Kring apart from other forms of ransomware currently prevalent in the wild is that it uses two forms of encryption and destroys any backup files accessible to it in an effort to prevent victims from retrieving backup files without paying a ransom. Attention about this flaw was also raised last week by the FBI and the Cybersecurity Information Security Agency, or the CISA, that advanced persistent threat groups were actively exploiting the known vulnerabilities in Fortinet's FortiOS cybersecurity operating system that affected their SSL VPNs. So if you are running Fortinet or any of your customers, please make sure they are updated to the latest version of FortiOS and generally limit where VPN access can originate from if possible. Links to ThreatPost's articles about this are in the description below. If you are running Cisco Soho routers RV110W, RV130, RV130W, or RV215W, and the fact that they were already end of life was not reason enough to get rid of them, hopefully this new vulnerability will encourage you, or at least disable remote management until you have the budget. Cisco announced CVE 2021-1459 with a score of 9.8 that allows a remote attacker the ability to execute arbitrary code unauthenticated due to an improper validation of user-supplied input on the web-based management interface. All an attacker would have to do to exploit this is to send crafted HTTP requests to your router, allowing them to execute their code as root. Awesome. Cisco says since the product is end of life, they will not be releasing an update to address the vulnerability, and they say there are no workarounds. Our last story this week involves two security advisories from VMware reported by the Hacker News. The first is around VMware Carbon Black Cloud Workload Appliance. A critical vulnerability has been reported, tracked as CVE 2021-21982, with a CVSS score of 9.1 that affects all versions of the product prior to 1.0.1. This vulnerability allows a threat actor to bypass authentication by manipulating a URL on the administrative interface to gain administrator-level access to the API of the appliance. Once access is gained, a malicious actor can then view and alter administrative configuration settings. Users are encouraged to upgrade to version 1.0.2. The second security advisory for VMware affects 3 products with 2 separate vulnerabilities. The products affected are VMware vRealize Operations, VMware Cloud Foundation, and vRealize Suite Lifecycle Manager. The first vulnerability, CVE 2021-21975, allows an attacker with network access to the API to be able to carry out a server-side request forgery attack to steal administrative credentials. The second vulnerability, CVE 2021-21983, allows them to write files to arbitrary locations on the underlying Photon operating system, also using the same API. VMware has released patches for affected products, along with workarounds to mitigate risks associated where the patch cannot be installed or is not available. Links for all of that is in the details below this video. And with that concludes our first episode of Bear Security. Details for the stories discussed are linked in the description below. We hope you like and subscribe for more content in the future, and be sure to check out our website, syntaxbearer.io. For Bear Security, I'm the person who hasn't seen what happened last week on Shameless, Chris Cly.